This is one of the cheapest grinders that's capable of grinding for espresso. Though there are some caveats to that sentence, and I'm going to address each of them in this video. I bought this grinder from AliExpress, and like many of you watching, I'm not ready to fork out a lot of money on a grinder. My coffee journey has really just begun, and I've always been a believer in use what you have to the best of your ability and then move up. So I decided I was going to try and master this grinder first before moving up. So this grinder is made by Bellows, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. The design language is very similar to a lot of other grinders out there, top tier grinders out there, and this particular model has been made in, I believe, Taiwan first and then China. There's a few American companies making it, there's quite a few, but the design language is quite similar. Now, out of the box, this machine is not capable of grinding for espresso, and I'm going to go through how I was able to modify it both externally and internally, and show you exactly how I got it to grind fine enough for espresso. Now, the reason I went with this one, number one, it's cheap, and number two, it allowed me to learn quite a lot about how grinders work, what the internals look like. And after doing a lot of research on this particular one, I found out that you can take it apart and make those modifications. So that's what I did. This isn't what the grinder used to look like when it came out of the box, not by a long shot. I will put a picture up of what it used to look like now. So as you can see, there's been a few changes made. Number one, the big hopper that came with it is no longer here. The reason for that is I don't want to keep all of my beans in a big hopper. I want to keep them in a vacuum canister to keep them as fresh as long as possible. So I replaced the hopper with a Bellows and a single dose funnel. I have put on some wooden accents here and down at the base, and the dial has also changed. Now, these are just the superficial things, the stuff that's going to make me feel good while using it, but it doesn't make the grinder any better. You see there's the wooden bits. These are just actually coasters that I bought from AliExpress as well. I found coasters that fit exactly onto the grinder. So this is just quite literally a drinks coaster. The Bellows itself is again from AliExpress. This is a 3D printed single dose funnel. So what is a Bellows used for, you might ask? Well, it's kind of fun to use, but what it really does is it pushes any of the remaining grinds that are stuck in the grinder. You just give it a little push and it kind of creates a bit of air that'll go through those coffee grinds and push them into the dosing cup. The goal here is to get as much coffee grounds out of the coffee as we put in, right, in coffee beans. So if we put 18 grams of coffee beans in, we want to get 18 grams of coffee grounds out. And this just helps those stuck coffee grinds on their way. This is a dosing cup that I got separately. It didn't come with it. What did come with it is a big box type thing that you'd grind into. I'm guessing for lots of coffee. I don't know why you'd want to do that with this particular grinder, but that is what it came with. So I got this separately, and as you might see, I've made it magnetic, which I really love. The way I did that was, number one, there is a magnetic sticker on the bottom of the dosing cup. And number two, if we slide off the coaster, you'll see that I've just fitted a magnet underneath. And that's what allows the dosing cup to stick to it. Magnets are great. I love magnets. So these are the sort of superficial things that I've done, and this just slides back into place. So what else have I done? The dial is different. The reason the dial is different is because I didn't like the look of the initial dial, and this dial, it just comes off actually. The original dial has a screw in the middle, you just screw it out and then you can just take it off. And what I've done is I've taken a 58mm dosing ring and I've put it around the outside of the original dial. For me, it just makes it feel a little bit more premium. It's metal now rather than that sort of chromed plastic that was there previous. And then I fitted a center cap sticker for, well, what would usually be on a car wheel to the center. So what did I do to make this grinder capable of grinding for espresso? Like I said, it wasn't capable out of the box, and that required a bit of tweaking. And what I'm going to show you is how it grinds out of the box. So I have some coffee beans here, and I'm going to pop them in. Now we're just going to do a few just because I want to give you an example of how it grinds when it came out of the box. Now, if I just pour these out here, I think even from that distance away from the camera, you can probably tell that this is not fine enough for espresso. In fact, this is far too coarse for most coffee applications. So what do we do to make this grind finer? Well, the first step to that is taking off the dial. Like I said, the original dial will just have a screw in the middle, and you can unscrew that and then the dial comes off. Now I should explain that the reason we need to take the wheel off is because, as you can see, there are wheel stops inside this dial, and that means that it'll stop you when it's gotten to its finest setting, or equally it'll stop you when it's got to the most coarse setting. So as you can see, after we've taken off our dial, the inner wheel here is on a screw, and like any screws, if you tighten it, the burrs are going to come closer together, and if you loosen it, the burrs are going to get further apart from each other. So if we start in a far out position and we turn our grinder on, you'll be able to hear that the motor is running, but the burrs are not touching each other. So what we're going to do is incrementally get tighter and tighter on our wheel. So what we want to do is find the perfect sweet spot where they're just about touching but not quite, and that's going to be our finest setting. Touching, not touching. So I'm happy with that setting now. I'll turn the grinder back off. We'll put our dial back on. Well, let's grind up a little bit more coffee. All right, let's pop it into the grinder. Whoa, cheeky little bean. And let's see how fine it grinds now. Now that is much, much finer. In fact, that is perfect espresso grind. So once you have your grinder calibrated, moving the dial left or right will of course bring the burrs closer together or further away from each other, giving you a finer ground coffee or equally a more coarse ground coffee. So that's how you can modify this grinder to be capable of grinding for espresso, all on a budget of about 75 euros. To me, that's pretty good. Now, we are going to be working with less capable motors. The build quality isn't great. This is a metal body, but the bottom is plastic. But you can do a few things to this grinder to first make it be able to grind for espresso, and number two, make it look a little bit better and equally feel a little bit better. Let me know if you're thinking about buying this grinder. To me, it was well worth the money. For 75 euro, I don't think you could go wrong. That's cheaper than a lot of hand grinders out there as well. I've had this machine now for about 5 months and I've had absolutely no issues with it. Now, I do clean it every couple of weeks, but that's the same of any grinder that you will buy. I also noticed that a lot of you watching are not subscribed, so please do subscribe. It helps me out a lot and you'll get notified then when I create a new video. But for now, I'll say goodbye and I will see you in the next video.